Captain Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars stream past the viewscreen. The Harmony's Edge was a diplomatic vessel, painted white with blue stripes that represented Earth's oceans. For 15 years, Ji-hoon had traveled between star systems, carrying messages and helping different species solve their problems. It was peaceful work, and he liked it that way. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission from the Velcrin ships," said Lieutenant Yuna from her station. Her voice carried a hint of frustration. "They're blocking our path again," Ji-hoon sighed. This was the third time this week. The Velcrin were a reptilian species with dark green scales and yellow eyes that seemed to glow in dim light. They had joined the Galactic Council only 2 years ago, but already they were causing problems. They flew massive warships painted blood red, and they seemed to enjoy making other species uncomfortable. "Let them through," Ji-hoon said calmly. "We're not here to fight." On the view screen, a Velcrin face appeared. The creature's mouth was full of sharp teeth, and when it spoke, its voice was like rocks grinding together. "Human ship, you move too slowly. We claim this route now. Find another way." Ji-hoon kept his face neutral. "This is a free trade route, recognized by the Galactic Council. We have every right to be here." The Velcrin laughed, a harsh sound that made several crew members flinch. "The Council is weak, just like you humans. Your species talks about peace and friendship. But everyone knows you're just afraid to fight. Step aside, or we'll move you ourselves." Yuna's hand moved toward the weapons console, but Ji-hoon shook his head slightly. "We'll adjust our course," he said quietly. "There's no need for conflict." The Velcrin sneered. "That's what I thought. Cowards." The transmission ended. Yuna turned to face Ji-hoon, her eyes blazing. "Captain, we can't keep backing down. They're treating us like prey animals." "I know," Ji-hoon said softly. "But our orders are clear. Peace, at all costs. We're not here to start wars." 300 light-years away on the council station, Ambassador Nari sat in the great circular chamber, where representatives from 47 species gathered. The chamber was beautiful, with a dome ceiling that showed the stars beyond. Each species had their own section, designed to make them comfortable. The human section had chairs and gravity that matched Earth's. Nari was tired. She had been arguing with the council for 6 hours straight about the Velcrin problem. The Velcrin had been harassing human ships, claiming human territory, and insulting Earth's representatives. But every time Nari asked the council to intervene, they refused. "Ambassador Nari," said the council speaker, a floating jellyfish-like creature from a water world. "We understand your concerns. But the Velcrin have not violated any major treaties. These are minor disputes. You must handle them yourselves." "This minor disputes?" Nari stood up, her voice rising. "They've blocked 17 trade routes. They've threatened our merchant vessels. Just yesterday, they claimed that 3 of our mining operations are now in their territory, even though we've been there for 50 years. A Velcrin representative stood in their section. He was larger than most, with scars across his scales. "If the humans cannot defend their territory, perhaps they do not deserve it. In nature, the strong take what they can hold. If Earth is weak, that is not our problem." Several other species made sounds of agreement. Nari felt her heart sink. The galaxy saw humanity as soft, as weak. For 200 years, humans had been peacemakers and traders. They had deliberately kept their military small, focusing on science and diplomacy instead. Now that kindness was being seen as weakness. "We're not asking for war," Nari said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're asking for fairness. We're asking the council to enforce its own rules." The council speaker's tentacles waved slowly. "We will take your request under consideration, but we cannot force species to change their behavior unless laws are broken. Perhaps you should negotiate directly with the Velcrin." Nari sat down heavily. She knew what that meant. The council wouldn't help. On a small farming colony called Sabiol Station, Dr. Minho was having a much better day. He stood in the hospital garden, watching children play. The colony was home to 30,000 people, mostly farmers and their families. They grew food that was shipped across human space, feeding millions. A little girl ran up to him, holding a flower. "Dr. Minho! Look what I grew." Minho smiled and knelt down. "That's beautiful, Isul. You did a great job." The girl beamed with pride. Behind her, a teacher named Hana was leading a class of students through the garden. They were learning about earth plants and how they grew in the colony's artificial soil. It was a good life, peaceful and simple. "Doctor," a nurse called from the hospital door. "We just received a strange message from the orbital sensors. Unknown ships entering the system." Minho stood up, frowning. "What kind of ships?" "They're saying they're Velcrin." A cold feeling settled in Minho's stomach. "Why would Velcrin ships come here? We're a farming colony. There's nothing here but crops and families." The nurse looked worried. "They're not responding to our hails." Back on the council station, Nari received an emergency message. She read it 3 times, her hands shaking. Then she ran from the chamber toward the communication center. The message was from Earth's Defense Command. The Velcrin Empire had issued an official statement. They claimed that humanity had 3 colony worlds in space that rightfully belonged to the Velcrin ancestors. They demanded that humans evacuate those worlds within 30 days, or face appropriate consequences. The 3 worlds they named were Sabiol Station, New Sol, and Terra Nova. Together, those colonies held 200,000 human civilians. Nari immediately called for an emergency council session. Within an hour, all 47 species had gathered again. "The council must act," Nari said, her voice sharp. "This is not a minor dispute. This is a direct threat against human civilians. The Velcrin have no historical claim to those worlds. They didn't even know those systems existed until we told them about our colonies." The Velcrin representative stood again. "We have ancient star maps that show those systems were explored by our ancestors. The humans are squatters. If they will not leave peacefully, we will remove them." "This is insane," Nari shouted. "You're talking about evicting 200,000 people from their homes." The council speaker spoke slowly. "This is a bilateral matter between humans and Velcrin. We cannot take sides in territorial disputes. You must negotiate." "Negotiate?" Nari could barely believe what she was hearing. "They're threatening our families." "Then perhaps," the Velcrin representative said with a cruel smile, "humans should have been stronger. Perhaps humans should have built more weapons instead of more farms." "This is not our problem." Nari looked around the chamber. Some species looked uncomfortable, but none spoke up. None offered help. They were all afraid of the Velcrin, or they simply didn't care about humanity's problems. She felt something cold settle in her chest. For 200 years, humanity had tried to be good galactic citizens. They had helped other species, shared their technology, and worked for peace. And now, when they needed help, the galaxy turned its back. On the Harmony's edge, Ji-hun received the same message. He read it in silence, then called his crew together. "We've been ordered to return to Earth," he told them. "All human ships are being recalled." "Why?" Yuna asked. Ji-hun looked at his crew, at their young faces. Most of them had never seen combat. Most of them had grown up in a peaceful galaxy. "Because someone finally pushed too hard," he said quietly. "And now we have to decide who we really are." The 30-day deadline came and went. Humanity refused to abandon their colonies. They sent the Velcrin a detailed response showing 200 years of legal claims, settlement records, and council-approved documents. The Velcrin ignored it all. On day 31, Dr. Minho was eating lunch in the hospital cafeteria on Sabiol Station when the alarm started screaming. The lights turned red, and a recorded voice began speaking. "This is not a drill. All civilians proceed to emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill." Minho dropped his food and ran toward the pediatric ward. He had to get the children to safety. The hospital had been built with underground bunkers, places designed to protect patients during emergencies. He had always thought they would never be needed. Teacher Hana was already in the children's ward, gathering students. "Everyone stay calm," she said, even though her voice was shaking. "We're going to go downstairs now, just like we practiced." "Miss Hana, what's happening?" asked little Isul, clutching her stuffed animal. Just a safety drill, sweetheart. Hana lied. Through the window, she could see red lights in the sky. Ships were descending through the atmosphere. Big ships, painted the color of blood. The first missile hit the agricultural dome 3 kilometers away. The explosion was so bright it hurt to look at. The shockwave shattered windows across the colony. Hana threw herself over the children as glass rained down. Minho grabbed as many children as he could, pulling them toward the stairs. Move. Everyone move now. But they were too slow. The Velkrin weren't just attacking military targets. They were attacking everything. The second missile hit the residential sector. The third hit the school. The fourth hit the marketplace where families were shopping. Hana made it to the bunker with 15 children. She counted them 3 times, her heart breaking as she realized 12 were missing. 12 of her students were still up there. The bombardment lasted for 20 minutes. When it finally stopped, Hana climbed back up the stairs with Dr. Minho. What they saw made them both stop breathing. The colony was gone. Buildings were burning. The beautiful garden where children had played was now a crater. Bodies lay in the streets. Most of them were civilians. Many of them were children. Minho fell to his knees next to a small body. It was Isul. She was still holding her stuffed animal. He couldn't save her. He couldn't save any of them. In orbit above the burning colony, a Velkrin warship broadcast a message. The commander's face appeared on every screen that was still working. "This is what happens to prey that forgets its place," the Velkrin said, his teeth showing in what might have been a smile. "You had 30 days to leave. You chose to stay. These deaths are your fault. Humans, submit to our demands, or more colonies will burn. You have 3 days to evacuate the remaining worlds." The transmission ended with footage of the attack, showing buildings exploding and people running. The Velkrin had recorded it all. They had filmed human civilians dying, and they were broadcasting it like entertainment. Captain Ji-hoon saw the broadcast from his ship. He was halfway back to Earth when the news reached him. He watched the footage in silence, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair so hard his knuckles turned white. 12,000 people were dead. 3,000 of them were children. Yuna was crying at her station. Other crew members looked sick. One of them ran from the bridge to vomit in the bathroom. "Sir," Yuna said through her tears, "we have to do something. We have to fight back." Ji-hoon didn't answer immediately. He was thinking about all the times he had backed down from Velkrin harassment, all the times he had chosen peace over pride. He had thought he was being wise. He had thought he was being mature. Now he knew he had just been letting a bully get stronger. "Change course," Ji-hoon said quietly. "Take us to Earth, maximum speed." Ambassador Nari collapsed during the emergency council session. She had been standing at the human section, screaming at the other species to help. When the footage of the attack was broadcast, she saw the children running. She saw the explosions. She saw everything. When she woke up, she was in the medical center. A doctor from a friendly species was standing over her. "You fainted," the doctor said gently. "Your blood pressure was dangerously high." "I have to get back to the chamber," Nari said, trying to sit up. "I have to make them help us." The doctor put a hand on her shoulder. "Ambassador, the session ended 2 hours ago. The council voted to remain neutral. They're calling it a bilateral dispute." Nari felt something break inside her chest. Not her heart, but something deeper. It was her faith in the galactic community. Her belief that the council stood for something good. "They saw the footage?" she asked. "Yes." "They saw the children?" "Yes." "And they did nothing?" The doctor looked away. "I'm sorry." Nari stood up, pushing past the doctor. She walked back to the council chamber, her legs shaking. Most of the representatives had left, but a few remained, talking in small groups. The Velkrin representative was there, speaking with 3 other species. He was laughing. Something cold and hard settled in Nari's chest. She walked up to the Velkrin and spoke in a voice that didn't sound like her own. "You killed 3,000 children," she said. The Velkrin looked down at her. We removed an infestation. You should thank us for the warning. Evacuate your other colonies, or they will share the same fate." Nari stared at him. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stared, memorizing his face. "You just made a mistake," she said quietly. "The biggest mistake your species will ever make." The Velcrin laughed again. "Is that a threat, little human? What will you do? File a complaint? Humans don't fight. Everyone knows this. You're prey pretending to be predators." Nari turned and walked away. She went to the human quarters and sent a coded message to Earth. It was one word: reckoning. On Earth, in a facility deep under the ocean, Admiral Sora received the message. She was an old woman now, with silver hair and scars on her hands from her days as a fighter pilot. She had been waiting for this message for 50 years, hoping it would never come. She entered her command codes into the system. Lights began flashing across the control room. Computers that had been sleeping for decades suddenly woke up. "Ma'am?" asked a young officer. "What's happening?" "We're going to war," Sora said simply. "But ma'am, Earth's military is small. We only have a few dozen ships." Sora smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "That's what everyone thinks. Activate Protocol Reckoning. Open Luna Base. Wake up the Ghost Fleet." The officer's eyes went wide. "The Ghost Fleet is real?" "Oh yes," Sora said. "Very real. And very, very angry." On the moon, massive doors began opening. They had been sealed for 200 years, hidden under fake meteor craters. Inside, 500 warships sat waiting. They weren't old ships, they were new, constantly upgraded by automated systems, maintained by robots that never slept. Humanity hadn't abandoned warfare. They had just stopped talking about it. Across human space, other hidden bases began opening. On Mars, in the asteroid belt, on stations that supposedly mined ice, weapons that the galaxy had never seen started powering up. Engineer Taeyang stood in his laboratory, looking at screens full of equations. He had spent his whole life working on theoretical weapons, things that could never be used because humanity was peaceful. Now his supervisor was calling. "Taeyang," the voice said, "make them real. All of them. You have 72 hours. "All of them?" Taeyang asked. "Even the reality displacement missiles? Even the quantum mines? Those violate 17 warfare conventions." "I don't care," the supervisor said. "They killed our children. Make every weapon you ever dreamed of. Make them work. Make them terrifying." Taeyang looked at his life's work. Weapons that could tear holes in space. Bombs that could delete matter from existence. Technology that the peaceful galaxy had never imagined humans would build. "It will be ready in 48 hours, he said. Captain Ji-hoon's ship reached Earth. He was directed to land at a military base he had never heard of. When he stepped off his ship, Admiral Sora was waiting. "Captain Ji-hoon," she said, "how would you like a promotion?" "Ma'am, you're about to become Admiral Ji-hoon. The Harmony's Edge isn't a diplomatic vessel anymore. We're removing the outer shell. Underneath, you have a stealth dreadnought with enough firepower to level a planet. We've been planning for this day for a long time." Ji-hoon looked at his ship. It was already being transformed, the white panels falling away to reveal dark metal underneath. "What are we going to do?" he asked. Sora's smile was cold. "We're going to teach the galaxy a lesson. We're going to show them what happens when you make humanity choose between peace and survival." The Velcrin Empire was celebrating. In their capital city, crowds gathered in the streets to watch broadcasts of their victory over the humans. They had shown the weak prey species their place. Their military commanders drank and boasted about how easy it had been. Warlord Kravex, leader of the Velcrin fleet, stood on a balcony overlooking the crowds. He raised his arms, and the people cheered. "This is just the beginning," he shouted. "The humans will surrender their colonies, and then we will take more. The weak do not deserve the stars." The crowd roared with approval. No one noticed the small satellite that had just entered orbit above their planet. It was tiny, barely bigger than a refrigerator, and it didn't show up on any scanners. It just floated there, watching and listening. Across the Velcrin Empire, hundreds of these satellites were being deployed by ships the Velcrin couldn't see. Ships that bent light around themselves, that absorbed sensor waves instead of reflecting them. Ghost ships. General Junho commanded the Ghost Fleet from his flagship. He was a quiet man who rarely smiled. He had spent 30 years preparing for a war he hoped would never come. Now that it was here, he felt strangely calm. "All satellites in position, sir," reported his tactical officer. "Good," Junho said. "Now we wait for Admiral Sora's signal. When it comes, we move fast and we move hard. The Velcrin won't know what hit them until it's too late." On Earth, Admiral Sora stood in the war room, surrounded by screens showing every Velcrin position in the galaxy. She had been planning this for 3 days straight without sleep. Now everything was ready. Ambassador Nari stood beside her. She had returned to Earth for the first time in 10 years. "Are you sure about this?" Nari asked quietly. "No," Sora admitted. "But they killed our children. They laughed about it. They broadcast it like entertainment. What choice do we have?" Nari thought about little Isul and all the others who died on Sabiel Station. "No choice at all," she said. Sora nodded and pressed a button. "All fleets, this is Admiral Sora. Execute Operation Reckoning. Show no mercy to military targets. Protect all civilians, and remember what we're fighting for." Across human space, 500 warships began moving. They jumped through space using drives that had been quietly upgraded for decades. They appeared in Velcrin space like ghosts emerging from walls. The first battle lasted less than 10 minutes. 3 Velcrin defense fleets were guarding their outer colonies. They detected the human ships and moved to attack, confident in their superior numbers. They had 1,000 ships. The humans only had 60. But the human ships did something impossible. They fired weapons that warped space itself. The Velcrin watched their sensors go crazy as reality bent around them. Then their ships simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, not exploded, just gone. Erased from the universe like words wiped from a whiteboard. Engineer Taeyang watched the results of his reality displacement missiles with mixed feelings. They worked perfectly. Each missile created a small bubble where the laws of physics changed for exactly 3 seconds. Inside that bubble, matter forgot how to exist. When the bubble collapsed, anything inside was just gone. "It's too easy," Taeyang said to himself. "We're too good at this." Commander Do-hyun and his Wraith Corps were already inside Velcrin space. They hadn't come on ships. They had been there for days, sneaking onto Velcrin military stations using personal stealth suits that cost more than a small planet. Do-hyun crouched in the ventilation shaft of the main Velcrin command center. Below him, Velcrin officers were screaming into communicators, trying to understand what was happening to their fleets. "Sir, we've lost contact with the outer defense." "How?" "We don't know. Our sensors can't find them." Do-hyun smiled inside his helmet. That was the point. He placed a small device on the ventilation grate and activated it. The device would record everything the Velcrin said and send it back to human intelligence. The Velcrin would never know it was there. All across the Velcrin Empire, Do-hyun's team was doing the same thing. Listening devices in command centers, trackers on military ships, cameras in government buildings. Within hours, humanity would know everything about the Velcrin military. Captain Ji-hoon, now Admiral Ji-hoon, commanded a strike force of 50 ships. His mission was to capture a Velcrin military base without killing the civilians living nearby. It was a test to see if humanity could still be precise, still be careful, even when they were angry. "All ships, this is Ji-hoon. Remember the rules of engagement. Military targets only. If you see civilians, you do not fire. We're not here to become monsters." His ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel right next to the Velcrin base. The Velcrin immediately launched fighters and activated their defensive shields. They were ready for a fight. Ji-hoon's ships deployed quantum mines. These weren't normal explosives. They phased into a different dimension and waited. When Velcrin fighters flew through them, the mines phased back into normal space for exactly 1 second, appearing inside the fighter's hull. The explosion destroyed the fighter from the inside. The Velcrin base commander watched in horror as his entire fighter wing was destroyed in under a minute. His shields were useless. The human weapons were appearing inside his defenses. "Surrender," came a message from the human fleet. "You have 60 seconds to evacuate all personnel. After that, we will destroy the base." The Velcrin commander was too proud to surrender. He fired every weapon he had at the human ships. The missiles and energy beams struck perfect hits, but the human shields didn't even flicker. The technology gap was terrifying. 59 seconds passed. 60 seconds passed. The human ships fired a single missile at the base. It struck the main reactor. Instead of exploding, the base simply folded in on itself, compressed into a space the size of a basketball. Then it was gone, pulled into an artificial black hole that existed for 3 seconds before collapsing. Every Velcrin who had been in the base was gone. Every civilian who had been in the nearby town was safe. "Target destroyed," Jihun reported. "No civilian casualties." Across Velcrin space, similar battles were happening. Human ships appeared without warning, destroyed military targets with impossible weapons, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The Velcrin military was being taken apart piece by piece. In the Velcrin capital, Warlord Kravex wasn't celebrating anymore. He was in his war room, surrounded by advisors, who looked terrified. "How many ships have we lost?" he demanded. 247, my lord. In just 6 hours. "And how many human ships have we destroyed?" The advisor looked at the floor. "None, my lord. We haven't even damaged one." Kravex slammed his fist on the table. "This is impossible! Our intelligence said humans were weak. Our spies said they had no military." "The humans lied to us, my lord. Or perhaps they lied to everyone. They've been preparing for war this entire time." Kravex felt fear for the first time in his life. The prey species had become predators, and they were better at it than anyone imagined. Scientist Minji activated Project Sundancer on schedule. It was the most dangerous weapon humanity had ever created, something so powerful they had never dared to test it, a weapon that could manipulate space-time itself. "All systems green," she reported to Admiral Sora. "Sundancer is ready." "Good," Sora said, "but we don't use it unless we have to." That weapon doesn't just destroy enemies, it could tear a hole in reality itself. "It's our final option." Minji looked at the massive device in orbit above Earth. It looked like a ring of metal and crystal, 3 kilometers across. Inside it, exotic matter held back forces that wanted to rip the universe apart. If they released those forces in a controlled way, they could delete an entire star system from existence. She prayed they would never need to use it. Back at the Galactic Council station, representatives from 47 species watched the war unfold. They had expected the Velcrin to crush humanity within days. Instead, they were watching the Velcrin Empire collapse. "How is this possible?" asked a representative from a bird-like species. "Humans don't have this technology. We've seen their ships. We know their capabilities." Ambassador Nari appeared on the main screen. She was calling in from Earth. "You know what we wanted you to know?" Nari said coldly. "For 200 years, humanity has been peaceful. We've been friends, and traders, and helpers. We did that by choice, not because we were weak. We could have conquered half the galaxy by now. We chose not to. We chose to believe in the Council, in cooperation, in peace." "And now?" asked the Council speaker. "Now you've shown us that peace only works when everyone wants it." The Velcrin didn't want peace. They wanted war. They killed our children and laughed about it. You did nothing. So now we'll show the galaxy what humans are really capable of. When someone forces our hand, Ambassador, the Council demands that you stop this war immediately. The level of destruction you're causing is unacceptable. Nari's laugh was bitter. "You demand? You, who did nothing when children were murdered. The Council is irrelevant. We don't need your permission to defend ourselves. We don't need your approval to exist. From now on, humanity makes its own rules. She ended the transmission. The council chamber erupted in shouting. Some species were angry, some were afraid. A few were quietly pleased. In Velcrin space, Admiral Ji-hun's fleet had just destroyed its 100th target. They were 3 days into the war, and the Velcrin military was broken. But Ji-hun felt no joy in the victory. He had just received reports from the ground teams. Dr. Minho was with them. He had volunteered to come to help any wounded they found. Now he was setting up field hospitals in Velcrin territory, treating refugees who were fleeing the combat zones. How many civilians have we rescued? Ji-hun asked. 40,000 so far, Minho reported. Mostly Velcrin, who don't support their government's war. We're taking them to safe zones, giving them food and medical care. Ji-hun nodded. This was important. Humanity was angry, but they weren't going to become the monster. They would destroy the Velcrin military, but they would protect innocent lives. Keep up the good work, Doctor, Ji-hun said. He looked at the tactical display. The Velcrin Empire was surrounded. There was nowhere left to run. The war entered its final phase on day 45. The Velcrin Empire, which had controlled 200 star systems, now held only 20. Their fleets were destroyed. Their military bases were gone. Their leaders were hiding in bunkers. Warlord Kravex sat in his underground command center, watching his empire die. Reports came in constantly, each one worse than the last. My lord, the humans have surrounded the home world. They're demanding we surrender. Kravex looked at his remaining advisors. Most were gone, either dead or fled. Only the most loyal remained, and even they looked defeated. How many ships do they have in orbit? He asked. 300, my lord. Our sensors say they have weapons aimed at every city, every military installation, every government building. They could destroy the planet in minutes. If they wanted to. Kravex felt his scales go cold. He had started this war thinking humans were weak prey. Now he knew the truth. Humans weren't prey at all. They were predators who had been pretending to be peaceful. A message came through from the human fleet. Admiral Sora's face appeared on the screen. Warlord Kravex, she said, her voice emotionless. This war is over. Your military is destroyed. Your empire is broken. I'm giving you one chance to end this without more bloodshed. Surrender now, or we will turn your home world into dust. Kravex wanted to refuse. He wanted to fight to the end. But he looked at the faces of his advisors and saw fear. He thought about the millions of Velcrin civilians on the planet below, civilians who had cheered when Sabiol's station burned, but who were still his people. What are your terms? He asked quietly. Admiral Sora's expression didn't change. Total surrender of all Velcrin military forces. All weapons turned over to human control. All Velcrin territory to be placed under temporary human administration until we decide what to do with you. 2. You would occupy our worlds? No, Sora said. We're not interested in ruling you. But we need to make sure you can never threaten anyone again. Kravex closed his eyes. He had no choice. I accept your terms. I surrender. But Admiral Sora wasn't done. One more thing. You broadcast the footage of children dying. You made entertainment out of murder. Every Velcrin who participated in planning or executing that attack will stand trial. That includes you. Kravex felt his blood run cold. You would execute me? That depends on what the judges decide. But yes, you will face justice for what you did. The transmission ended. Kravex sat in silence. He had lost everything. On Earth, Admiral Sora turned to Commander Do-hyun. Is your team ready? Yes, ma'am. We've identified every Velcrin military leader. Every officer who participated in the attack on Sabiol Station. We know where they are, and we're ready to bring them in. Do it, alive if possible, but I won't cry if some of them resist arrest. Do-hyun nodded and left to coordinate with his teams. Within hours, 300 Velcrin military officials were captured. Some surrendered quietly, Others tried to fight and were killed by Wraith Corps soldiers who appeared out of nowhere. The galaxy watched in shock as humanity dismantled the Velcrin Empire in just 47 days. Species that had thought humans were weak now saw the truth. Humanity had the most advanced military in the galaxy, and they had kept it hidden for 200 years. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Ambassador Nari attended, but she didn't sit in the human section. She stood in the center of the chamber, where only the council speaker usually stood. "Ambassador Nari, you are out of order," the council speaker said. "Please return to your section." "No," Nari said simply. "I'm done following your rules." "Humanity is done following your rules." The chamber erupted in protests. Representatives shouted and waved appendages. But Nari just waited, her face calm. Eventually, they quieted down. "For 200 years, humanity has been a good member of this council," Nari said. "We've followed every rule. We've helped every species that asked. We've shared our technology, our knowledge, our resources, and when we needed help, when our children were murdered, you did nothing. You called it a bilateral matter. You stayed neutral while innocents died." "The council cannot take sides in every dispute," the speaker protested. "That wasn't a dispute," Nari's voice rose. "That was genocide. That was the deliberate killing of civilians, including children. And you let it happen because you were afraid of the Velcrin, or because you didn't care about humans, or both." She looked around the chamber at all the different species. "Well, now you've seen what humanity can do when you force us to fight. You've seen our weapons. You've seen our ships. You've seen that we could have conquered half of you any time we wanted. We chose peace. We chose cooperation. But that choice only works if everyone makes it." "What are you saying, Ambassador?" asked a representative from a species that had always been friendly to humans. "I'm saying that humanity is leaving the Galactic Council. We're forming our own alliance, our own community. Any species that wants to join us is welcome, but only if they agree to our rules. Rule number 1. If someone attacks civilians, especially children, everyone responds. No neutrality. No looking away. Justice. Always." The chamber exploded in shouting again. Some species were angry, others were afraid. But Nari noticed that many were nodding quietly. These were species that had also felt helpless when the council failed them. Within a week, 19 species formally asked to join the new Terran Compact. They were tired of the council's weakness. They wanted to be part of something that would actually protect them. On the Velcrin homeworld, trials began. Human judges worked with representatives from other species to ensure fairness. The trials were broadcast across the galaxy so everyone could see that humanity sought justice, not revenge. Warlord Kravex stood before the judges. Evidence was presented showing his direct orders to attack Sabiel Station. Video footage showed him laughing about the deaths. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" the lead judge asked. Kravex looked at the humans judging him. He saw no hatred in their eyes, only cold determination. "We thought you were weak," he said quietly. "We thought your kindness was weakness. We were wrong." "Yes, you were," the judge said. "The sentence for your crimes is exile. You and all Velcrin who participated in the attack will be placed on generation ships and sent beyond the galactic rim. You will never be allowed to return to Council space. If any Velcrin ship ever comes back, we have planted quantum markers in every Velcrin alive today. We can activate those markers remotely. Every Velcrin in the galaxy will die simultaneously if you ever threaten us again." Kravex felt his scales turn pale. That's monitoring our entire species." "Yes," the judge said calmly. "That's exactly what it is. You wanted to see what happens when you make humans angry. This is it. You get to live, but you live with the knowledge that your entire species is one wrong move away from extinction." Engineer Taeyong watched the trial from his laboratory. He had built the quantum markers, tiny devices injected into every Velcrin during processing. They were dormant, harmless. But if activated, They would cause every Velcrin cell to destroy itself simultaneously. It was a terrible weapon. A weapon that targeted an entire species. Taeyong felt sick knowing he had created it. But they need to understand, Admiral Sora had told him. They need to know that humanity can be merciful. But only once. If they ever come back, if they ever threaten us again, there will be no second chances. Dr. Minho worked in the refugee camps where millions of Velcrin civilians waited to board the generation ships. These Velcrin hadn't wanted war. They were farmers, teachers, workers who had just wanted to live their lives. "I'm sorry," Minho told them as he treated their injuries and illnesses. "I'm sorry it came to this." An old Velcrin female looked at him with sad eyes. "Why do you help us?" "We killed your people." "Because you didn't kill anyone," Minho said gently. "Your leaders did. You're just caught in the middle. Humanity's war was never with you." The Velcrin female started crying. "I didn't know humans could be like this. So strong, but still kind." "We try," Minho said. "We really try." The generation ships launched 2 months after the war ended. 40 million Velcrin left the galaxy, heading into the darkness beyond the stars. They carried food, supplies, and technology to start new lives far away from other species. Captain Ji-hoon, now a full admiral, watched them go from his flagship. Part of him felt sad. The Velcrin could have been friends. They could have been allies. But they chose violence, and now they were paying the price. "All ships report the Velcrin fleet has cleared the galactic rim," his tactical officer reported. "Good," Ji-hoon said. "Maintain monitoring. If any ship turns back, we intercept. And if they refuse to leave?" Ji-hoon's face hardened. "Then we activate the markers. No second chances." Back on Earth, Admiral Sora stood in the war room, looking at the map of the galaxy. The war was over. Humanity had won. But the cost had been heavy. 12,000 human civilians dead, 40 million Velcrin exiled, and the galaxy's innocence was gone forever. "We showed them what we can do," Sora said to Ambassador Nari, who had returned to Earth. "Now, every species knows that humanity is not to be threatened." "Was it worth it?" Nari asked. "We've become what we always tried not to be. We've become the scary species." Two. Sora looked at the pictures on the wall. Pictures of the children who died on Cybiol Station. "Ask their parents," she said quietly. "Ask them if protecting our people was worth it." Nari had no answer. She knew Sora was right, but it still felt like humanity had lost something important. Their innocence. Their belief that peace was always possible. "What happens now?" Nari asked. "Now we build something better," Sora said. "The Terran Compact will be different from the Council. We'll actually protect our members. We'll actually enforce our rules. And if anyone threatens us again, they'll learn the same lesson the Velcrin did, which is," Sora's smile was cold, "that humanity prefers peace, but we're very, very good at war." 5 years had passed since the war ended. The galaxy was a different place now. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was weaker. 23 species had left to join the Terran Compact, and more were considering it. The Council had failed when it mattered most, and everyone knew it. Captain Ji-hoon, now Fleet Admiral Ji-hoon, stood on the bridge of his flagship. He was older now, with gray hair at his temples. He spent most of his time patrolling the borders of human space, making sure no one forgot the lesson the Velcrin had learned. "Sir, we're receiving a distress call," his tactical officer reported. "It's from the Mirani. Their colony is under attack by pirates." The Mirani were one of the species that had joined the Terran Compact. They were peaceful traders, similar to how humans used to be. "How many pirate ships?" Ji-hoon asked. 20, sir. The Mirani only have 3 defensive ships." "Send the message," Ji-hoon said. "Tell the pirates they have 1 chance to surrender." His ship jumped through space, appearing next to the Mirani colony in seconds. The pirate fleet saw the massive human dreadnought and immediately changed their minds about attacking. "We surrender. We surrender," came the panicked message. "Smart choice," Ji-hoon said quietly. Take them into custody. This was the new reality. The Terran Compact protected its members, and everyone knew that attacking a Compact member meant fighting humanity. Most species chose not to take that risk. On Cybiol Station, the colony had been rebuilt. It was more beautiful than before, with gardens and schools and homes for 30,000 people. A memorial stood in the center of the main plaza, showing the names of everyone who died in the attack. Teacher Hana stood before the memorial with her new class of students. She was older too, with lines around her eyes from crying too many tears. But she still taught, still helped children learn and grow. This memorial, she told her students, reminds us why we must never start wars, but also why we must never be afraid to end them. The people whose names are here died because the galaxy thought kindness meant weakness. They were wrong. A young boy raised his hand. Miss Hana, are we safe now? Hana smiled gently. Yes, sweetie. We're safe. There are human warships in orbit, and anyone who tries to hurt us will face the same fate as the Velkrin. What happened to them? They were sent away, far beyond the stars, and they can never come back. Dr. Minho still worked at the hospital. He had returned to Cybiol Station after the war because he couldn't abandon the place where so much was lost. He treated patients, delivered babies, and sometimes spoke to students about the importance of peace. But he also kept a weapon in his office now, a small plasma pistol, military grade. He had sworn never to be helpless again. Ambassador Nari ran the Terran Compact from a new station built near Earth. It was smaller than the Galactic Council station, but more efficient. The Compact had clear rules, and everyone followed them. We have 2 more species requesting membership, her assistant told her. The Dalari and the Korthan. Review their applications, Nari said. Make sure they understand our primary rule. The rule was simple. If you joined the Compact, you had to defend all other members. No neutrality. No looking away when civilians were attacked. Justice. Always. The Dalari and Korthan were accepted 2 weeks later. The Compact now had 38 members, almost as many as the Council had when it failed humanity. Engineer Taeyang had retired from weapons research. He couldn't do it anymore. Every time he looked at his creations, he saw the Velkrin ships disappearing from existence. He had become too good at destroying things. Now he worked on peaceful projects, faster engines for trading ships, better life support systems, tools that helped people instead of killing them. But his weapons still existed, locked away in secure facilities. Admiral Sora had insisted they keep them, just in case. We don't want to use them, she had said. But we need everyone to know they exist. Fear of consequences keeps the peace better than anything else. Taeyang understood, but he didn't have to like it. Admiral Sora was the oldest of the group now. She had thought about retiring many times, but she couldn't. Not yet. As long as she lived, she would make sure humanity never forgot what happened when they let their guard down. She gave speeches at military academies, teaching young officers about the war. We are not monsters, she always said. But we can become monsters when necessary. The key is knowing when necessary becomes unavoidable. The students always asked the same question. Would you do it again? Sora's answer never changed. Yes. To protect our people, to save our children, I would do it 1,000 times. But I pray every day that we never have to. Commander Do-hyun and his Wraith Corps still operated in the shadows. They monitored potential threats, gathered intelligence, and occasionally made problems disappear quietly. The galaxy knew they existed now, which made them more effective. The threat of invisible soldiers who could strike anywhere kept potential enemies honest. Do-hyun didn't enjoy the fear he inspired, but he accepted it as necessary. Better they fear us than test us, he told his team. General Junho kept the Ghost Fleet operational. 500 warships. Constantly upgraded. Always ready. They rarely left their hidden bases, but everyone knew they were there, the sleeping dragon that could wake at any moment. Do you think we'll have to fight again? A young officer asked him once. Junho looked at the tactical displays showing every corner of human space. Probably. There's always someone who thinks they can take what's ours. But they'll learn the same lesson the Velcrin did, which is that humanity's patience has limits. In the darkness beyond the galactic rim, the Velcrin generation ships traveled through empty space. 40 million Velcrin, living on massive ships, heading for distant galaxies where they might start again. The young Velcrin who were born after the Exodus didn't remember the Empire. They only knew the stories their parents told. Stories about the pride that destroyed their civilization. Stories about the humans who had shown mercy by letting them live, but who had also shown the terrible price of threatening them. Will we ever go back? The children asked. No, the adults always answered. That part of our history is over. We move forward now, and we remember the lesson we learned. Back in Council Space, new species occasionally joined the galactic community. The first thing they learned about was humanity. Every species told the story differently, but the message was always the same. The humans are good people, the stories said. They're kind, generous, creative, and peaceful. They will trade with you, help you, and be your friends, but never, ever threaten their children. The last species that did was erased from the galaxy. Some young species didn't believe the stories. They looked at human merchants and diplomats and saw only kindness. How could these friendly people be dangerous? Then they saw videos of human warships in action. They saw the quantum weapons, the reality displacement missiles, the singularity bombs. They saw what happened to the Velcrin Empire in just 47 days. They believed after that. Teacher Hana was giving a lecture to university students when someone asked her about forgiveness. Do you forgive the Velcrin? The student asked. Hana was quiet for a long moment. I forgive the civilians who had no choice. I forgive the children who were born after the war. But the leaders who ordered the attack? The warriors who laughed while children died? No. I don't forgive them. And humanity made sure they would never have the chance to do it again. Is that justice or revenge? It's survival, Hana said. It's making sure that what happened to my students never happens to anyone else. Dr. Minho attended a medical conference where doctors from dozens of species gathered. A young Velcrin doctor was there, one who had been born after the exile. She approached Minho nervously. Dr. Minho, she said quietly. I wanted to apologize for what my people did. Minho looked at her. She was just a kid, barely 20 years old. She hadn't hurt anyone. You don't need to apologize, Minho said gently. You weren't there. You didn't make those choices. But I'm Velcrin. We're all marked because of what our leaders did. Yes, Minho said honestly. You are. And that's unfair. But it's also reality. Your species learned a hard lesson about consequences. Humanity learned a hard lesson about trusting others to protect us. We all carry scars from that war. Will humanity ever trust us again? Minho thought about that. Maybe. In a few more generations. After enough time has passed that everyone can look at each other without seeing the past. But that will take a long time. The young Velcrin nodded sadly and walked away. Minho watched her go, feeling old and tired. War never really ended. It just left echoes that lasted for generations. Ambassador Nari gave her final speech as head of the Terran Compact. She was retiring, ready to spend her last years in peace. We built something good here, she told the assembled representatives. We built a community based on mutual protection and real justice. The galaxy is better because we refuse to accept neutrality in the face of evil. But remember this, power must be used carefully. We showed the galaxy what humanity can do when we're angry. Now we must show them what we can do when we're calm. Build, create, help, and heal. Be the good people we always wanted to be. Just never forget that we have the strength to defend that goodness. The representatives applauded. Species from across the galaxy, all united under principles that the old council had abandoned. Admiral Sora died at the age of 93. Her funeral was attended by leaders from every compact member species. They honored her as the woman who had saved humanity when no one else would. At her grave, Admiral Jihoon gave the eulogy. She never wanted to be a warrior, he said. She wanted peace as much as anyone. But when peace failed, when children died, and the galaxy looked away, she did what was necessary. She showed us that strength and mercy can exist together, that we can be kind without being weak, that we can love peace while being very, very good at war. 50 years after the war, a new species made contact with the Terran Compact. They were called the Vrin, and they were exploring the galaxy for the first time. Tell us about your people, the Vrin ambassador asked. Ambassador Park, who had taken over from Nari, smiled. We're humans. We're a peaceful species. We value creativity, compassion, and cooperation. We'll trade with you, share knowledge with you, and help you navigate galactic politics. What about your military? We've heard stories. Park's smile didn't change, but her eyes grew colder. We have the strongest military in the galaxy. We prefer never to use it. But if someone threatens us, particularly our civilians, particularly our children, we will respond with overwhelming force. We will end the threat so completely that the galaxy forgets it ever existed. That sounds harsh. It is. Park agreed. But it's also honest. We learned that being kind isn't enough if you can't defend that kindness. We learned that peace only works when everyone wants it. And we learned that sometimes, to protect the innocent, you have to become something terrible. What happened to the last species that attacked you? Park pulled up a hologram showing empty space. This is where the Velcrin Empire used to be. 300 systems, billions of people, 200 years of history. It took us 47 days to dismantle all of it. Where are they now? Somewhere beyond the edge of the galaxy. If they're still alive, we exiled them. We let them live because we're not monsters. But we made sure they could never threaten anyone again. The Vrin ambassador was quiet for a long time. Thank you for the honesty. That's what we do, Park said. We're honest. We're peaceful. We're your friends. Just don't make us your enemy. On Sabiol Station, a new generation of children played in the gardens. They had never known war. They didn't remember the attack. They just knew they were safe, protected by ships in orbit and by the reputation of their species. Teacher Hana was gone now, retired, and living her last years peacefully. But her replacement taught the same lessons. Never start wars. Never be cruel. But also, never be afraid to defend yourself. The memorial still stood in the plaza, and every year on the anniversary of the attack, people gathered to remember, to honor those who died, to remind themselves why humanity had changed from peaceful traders to the galaxy's most feared military power. We didn't want this, the speaker always said at these gatherings. We wanted peace. We wanted friendship. We wanted to explore the stars and learn from other species. But the galaxy forced our hand, and now everyone knows. Humanity is kind until you threaten what we love. Then we become something else entirely, something patient, calculated, and absolutely unstoppable. We are still the same people who explored Earth with curiosity and wonder. We still laugh, create art, tell stories, and love our families. But we're also the species that survived the Ice Age, that climbed to the top of Earth's food chain with nothing but intelligence and determination. We're the species that turns rocks into tools and tools into starships. We're human. We choose peace. But when war comes to us, we don't just win it. We end it so completely that our enemies' children's children still tell stories about what happens when you make humanity angry. And in the darkness between the stars, the Velcrin generation ships kept moving, carrying their lesson into the void. A lesson about pride, about consequences, and about the species that had shown them mercy by letting them survive. But had also shown them the terrible price of making humans choose between peace and survival. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was peaceful. Humanity was kind. But humanity was also something else. Humanity was dangerous when provoked, and no one wanted to see that again.